Now we're going to talk about one of the most important parts of starting your own candle business if you choose to take it that far, the economics, or how you figure out how you should be pricing your candles, or even how much your time is worth once you start making candles yourself at home and scaling up your business from just a handful of candles or all the way to a full-fledged business, and at what point you may need to take that business outside of your home into an external manufacturer for yourself. So some of you may choose to not go that far, and just say you prefer to make candles for yourself or your friends or for presents and stuff like that, which is one a great thing to do for candle making, and you'll gain lots of experience and really enjoy being able to customize your own candles versus what you can buy at the store and potentially a lot cheaper. But for those of you who want to go ahead and start to take a look at starting your own candle business, here's some things you should consider. First, we'll start up with a list of equipment that you may need, what I'd call some of your startup costs to get going, and you'll see kind of the total ends up running anywhere $60 to $85. Really, you should think about it as almost $100 once you add in. Where you're gonna have to buy some waxes, you're gonna have to buy some perfumes, and so forth. But let's kind of go through the items that you may need to have if you don't before you even start to make any candles. The first one would be is a hot plate. If you don't have, you could potentially use your kitchen stove if you have an electric stove and you don't mind the mess of all the waxes and so forth. If you do have a gas stove, I would highly recommend that you do not use it for candle making, as we talked in some of the safety aspects of candle making. And you should probably get your own kind of hot plate. And you'll see in the videos that's what we used a hot plate. So and you can get them from anywhere. You can look on Amazon. The specific one that I happened to use came from Target. It was only about $20 or so. You can get them in various sizes with great temperature control. And then if you really wanted to set up to do a double boiler, if you felt safer doing double boiler, you could use electric hot plate to do that as well and get the equipment for that. You may need some aluminum pouring pitchers. You may have some at home or old pots and pans you may want to use instead. As I mentioned before, what I really love about aluminum is that it conducts heat so fast that it helps to warm up your waxes a little bit quicker. But then also, if you were in the situation where you're starting to overheat your waxes, you could take the aluminum pitcher off of the heat and cool it down either on your counter or cookie pan or something that's a lot cooler, and it would take the heat out of it a lot faster than any other type of metal. You definitely need a thermometer. You happen to think Candle Science or Amazon, anyone else will have different types of thermometers for you. They can range from anywhere from $5 to $15 for most of the ones I've seen that are suitable for candle making. You do just want to make sure that they're able to handle the higher temperatures you may go to, but most any type of thermometer should be able to do so. You definitely want to have safety glasses, all your safety equipment. You want to have safety glasses. I've seen them on Amazon from as little as $1, for a pack of 10 for $10, all the way to about $10 per pair of safety glasses. You definitely want hot gloves. You can get the UV gloves, the one I like, just because you still have the flexibility to use your fingers and so forth, and it makes it very convenient for holding and pouring pitchers and just working with them, while you're working with very hot waxes. You'll probably need, I like to use a cookie pan or cookie sheet or something like that that you can place on top of your counters just to kind of contain the mess. It makes it a lot easier for cleanup because I feel like if you feel like that you're going to make a mess in your kitchen and it's going to take you a long time to clean up, you're probably less likely to even start making your own candles in the kitchen, or less often you're going to go in and start making it. If you feel like, oh, I don't have time, I really want to make some new candles or experiment with some new fragrances, but I don't have the time to clean up afterwards, you may not. But if you have a quick cleanup cookie sheet or something like that dedicated to your candle making, it can make it a lot easier. Again, you may already have some old ones you can reuse, or you can buy them on Amazon. And certainly a kitchen scale to make sure that you can keep track of how much wax you're using, how much fragrance you put in, and even for testing, when you burn your candle, to test the burn length, how many hours your candle will last, you're going to want to have a kitchen scale. So again, if you sum these up, it's going to be somewhere between $60 to $85 as shown here. And then you want to think about it as maybe $100 once you start to buy waxes and so forth. But what this means is obviously to get started in your own business, $100 entry cost to get in to start making your own business, assuming you have no equipment, is actually a really low barrier to start your own business. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but if you figured out you made $5 profit per candle, what that means is your first 20 candles or so, that profit will go to pay off all the investment costs for all the equipment needed to start making your business. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to then take a look over here at, and once you have all your equipment and you get started to make your own candles, how do you, it's very important, I think a lot of people tend to overlook, really almost the accounting standpoint of how much you're actually spending and how much you're using to make each individual candle, because everything's going to come in different quantities. Your wax is going to come in anywhere from 10 to 25 pounds, but you're only going to use half a pound, maybe a pound per candle, depending on the size of your candle. Whereas your fragrances, 1 ounce of fragrance may only last for 1 candle, or you may get a huge container that will last for many, many candles. So I think it's very important to keep track of the way I kind of detail it here, so you get an idea of, well, what is my true cost per candle, and this is excluding all that startup equipment as well. So this is on an ongoing cost, your running cost. So we'll go through it item by item. First thing you'll need is a candle jar. The ones that we showed you in our candle making portion come from Candle Science. They happen to be specifically an 8-ounce tumbler jar. You can choose anything you want, but those come in a case of 12 at about $12 per case currently. Obviously, if you're going to make 1 candle, you only need to use 1 of them, so it costs you about $1 per jar. And you can see I have 2 columns there, the cost per candle, and then also when including shipping of materials, because obviously, unless you can get free shipping, it's going to cost you more money to actually receive those materials. And things like a case of glass jars, the shipping cost for that can be expensive because they're fragile, or depending on where they're coming from. So you may be worth eventually investing in a Amazon Prime account so that you can get free shipping and all this kind of stuff. Or if you already have one, you can cut down a lot of your costs. But you really need to make sure that you do your total cost of yourself, total delivered cost for each item. That way, at the end of the day, all of your profits aren't going to shipping materials to you to make your candles. So in this case, I happen to know, at least for where I live, it only costs about $1 per jar. However, the shipping cost is almost exactly the same cost as the candles, so it ends up being effectively about $2 per jar. So you need to know that every time I'm using a jar, even though it cost me $1 to actually buy, I had to pay $2 per jar to get it to me. Next thing is the item, as far as the exact candles that we made in the candle making portion of the course, is paraffin wax. And in this case, we use Candle Science's Harmony Blend, which is the 4630 wax, about $1.80 a pound for the candle showed how to make, and you only need about half a pound of that, so that would be just under $1 per candle. But again, you got to take into account shipping, so we'll say about $1.25 or so for that item. Next one is for fragrance. So there are so many different types of fragrances out there, and they can cost wide ranges. And then also, once you figure out how much fragrance, your wax can hold, but then how much you want. Some people may want a really strong scented candle that really fills up the room. Well, that may take a lot of fragrance to produce, so that may be more expensive to make, versus some people like a very lightly scented or unscented candle, which obviously saves you cost on putting fragrances into your candles. So the one shown in the candle making course is a Very Vanilla from Candle Science. It's about $2.41 an ounce. I think one of the benefits of showing you that one is that the Very Vanilla fragrance is pretty powerful, so you don't need to put a whole lot into the candles to get a pretty good vanilla scent. Some people may want more, some people may want less, but in general about a quarter ounce of that fragrance would be enough to really scent the candles, which means you're only looking about 60 cents for your fragrance cost, which is pretty good considering, as we looked up, there are some waxes that can hold 1.5 ounces to 2 ounces of fragrance per pound of wax, meaning that you could potentially spend upwards of $2, potentially $3 per candle in just the fragrance, depending on the type of your fragrance. But I think we wanted to show you the vanilla scented candle one because it probably is can be one of your best sellers. Lots of people say, once you get started, it is a great selling to have a vanilla scented candle. Also, it is very cost effective because you can get a really good scent out of it for not using a whole lot of fragrance. And now let's look at the next one, which is wicks and so forth, which surprisingly are really, really important. And we talked through in our wicks section of the role that wicks play. But on average cost, it's relatively very inexpensive. One of the wicks we used in this one, we used the LX18, and based on what the recommendations, of course, through the wick recommendations sections online, and you can get them pre-tabbed, meaning they're already put together with the tab to go into the candle at about $7 per 100. So you're really only looking at about 7 cents per wick for each candle. Considering how important wicks are, that's a really low cost, a low investment for something, which makes wicks really affordable, but also very frustrating when something that's very inexpensive is making your entire candle not work if you get the wrong wick. That's why I really focus on trying to help you find the right wick for your waxes, because something that costs less than 10 cents can really ruin all the rest of your work on the waxes and jars and so forth. Wick stickers, we use them, so we document how much they were. It's about $5 per 100 or 5 cents each. Obviously, you may choose not to use them, but I think once you get going and start making larger batches and more candles, the ease of use of those I think makes them well worth 5 cents cost. And then once you have a filled candle, you can label it and have custom labels made. Labelsonthefly.com is one that I like to use. There are many different label suppliers you can look at, and just based on some of their prices, if you were going to do your own custom image where you upload a picture or whatever picture you may want to have on your candle label and then edit it that way, it's about $24 for 36 labels, so under $1 a label, approximately about $1 a label once you include shipping, which is I think a great deal for labels. One thing that's not included in this chart because it wasn't in the candle that we made it is we talked about coloring, dye chips, or liquid dyes or so forth, and that cost, because the candle we showed you how to make a vanilla, a white candle or an undyed candle can go very well with vanilla, so we didn't do that in this case, but obviously you would have to add the cost of dyes, which we kind of discussed during the wax section as well. So all in, you can see that you can get the cost of this specific candle would be down to about $3, but if you include all the shipping that it took to get to you, let's say let's say it's about $5 or so. So you can, when you think about it, if you want to do this for yourself or for your family or for presents, to have a candle that you made that you can customize with your own fragrance and so forth for about $5, to me, that I think that's a great benefit of learning to make your own candles versus going out and having to buy stuff from the stores, and you'll really enjoy the candles that you make probably a lot more than the ones you would in a store. But even at $5, the goal over time as you build your business is you obviously would want to buy, you can reduce your shipping costs by buying things in bulk. So you want to try to you want to think in your mind, okay, my candle costs $5 each to make. However, I want to try to drive that cost down to the column that's just the cost per candle, about $3.29, by buying things in bulk. So obviously you can buy, bulk waxes, buy even more wax, and you get a cost break as you go, tend to go down. You can buy your fragrance in larger volume instead of just 1 ounce at a time. You can buy 5-10 ounces at a time, or even a pound of fragrance if you know that it's a high seller they're going to use. So those are the tips and tricks that you want to do to try to get your cost down per candle. But obviously in the beginning, when you're just creating your lineup or you're just experimenting with new scents or new candles and you don't know how well they're going to sell, you're going to have to assume that you're going to have a higher cost per candle to begin with, because you're going to be paying more to ship those materials. And then the next thing we want to do is just take a look at, in general, profit. It seems like such a quick conversation, but it's very important. Once you have your candle and you make it, and you say, okay, it cost me about $5 to make my candle. Well, the next question becomes, how much do you want to sell your candle for, and how much money do you want to make per candle. And you could say, well, if it's only, you know, $5 to make a candle, I could sell it for even $8 and make $3 profit, and that seems like a really good amount of profit. But we'll talk in a second about all the things you need to consider going forward. So if you wanted to do that, one thing to think about, not just how much money you can make per candle, is the amount of time that you invest into making the candles. So if you have a pretty small operation just in your basement and so forth, or in your kitchen, the question then becomes, well, how many candles can you make in 1 hour? And if you say, oh, based on the equipment that I have, the scales that I have, the size containers, how long it takes to melt my waxes and pour them, and then do everything I need to do to label and trim it. If I could probably make about 5 candles in 1 hour, then it becomes, okay, well, if your profit is $3 per candle, your profit per hour is $15 per hour. The question then becomes, okay, is $15 per hour of my, basically probably of my time worth it, or do I really need to say, oh, that's not sufficient? If I was making $20 per hour, then I could really do my own business, especially if this were to grow and now either eats up a lot of your evening time or your weekend time. If you have a job or working a job, like at what point you have to say, okay, I need to make sure that the profit per hour in making candles exceeds the job I may be leaving or the part-time work I may be giving up to spend on making my own candles. So that's something to keep track of and think about. You may want to go with more high-end, fancier candles or fragrances or something like that, where you could potentially charge a higher price point and make a greater profit per hour if it justifies, okay, now I can make a sufficient amount of money per hour that makes my time worthwhile. Obviously, as you scale up and you can make large batches and make 10, 20, 30 candles at a time, or even 100, that I think that becomes very important. Or especially as you get into like, okay, this weekend I have to make 100 candles. Is it really worth my entire weekend to make 100 candles? Or should I really consider going and finding a manufacturer to make the candles for me, even though I know that that may cost me more money, or I will be able to have less profit, obviously, because I'm now going to have to pay someone out of part of my profit to then go make the candles for me. So these are the things you need to consider. Next one in there, I kind of hit a couple cells, which we'll open right now, and show you here is, not once you say, okay, it cost me about $5 to make the candle, and I'm going to sell it for $8, therefore my profit is $3 per candle. Question becomes, well, what are your other costs? Now that you have a finished candle, that may not be the end of it. If you have a finished candle that you're going to put in your car and take to a garage sale or take to a flea market or something like that, yeah, that could be your final cost, other than you probably want to account for the gas that takes you to get there. But if you were hoping to sell these candles online, well, what about the advertising costs? You may have to buy some ads online to get people to know about your candles, and then you have to evaluate, okay, how much do I pay per ad, and then how many sales do I get per dollar spent in advertising online, and then that has to take into account of, because that's obviously going to come out of your profit. If it takes you $1.50 in advertising to get one sale, that's going to come out of your profit. Instead of making $3 per candle, now you're only going to make $1.50 per candle, and maybe you would need to raise the price of your candle to justify the advertising spending that you may have. Additionally, what about shipping? So if you are going to hand deliver all of your candles, or just do them around town, like I mentioned, a flea market, or farmer's market, whatever the case may be, you may not have to plan for that. But in addition to just your price point of your candle, would you be able to charge shipping for your candles? And I can tell you from my experience, just going straight to the post office, with the candles I show you how to make, the post office wanted $8 per candle to ship it. Obviously, it could be because it's glass and fragile and the weight and so forth. And obviously, if you were shipping in bulk, you may be able to save a lot of money. But I can tell you from my personal experience, going to the post office, just trying to ship one candle, whether it be for a present or for one person, it was $8 shipping. So you need to say, okay, in addition to my price point of my candle, which may be $8, will the buyer be willing to pay an additional $8 for shipping, which now makes your candle $16 to them versus something they could go buy at their local grocery store or somewhere else online or even Amazon where they could get potentially free shipping. And that may be a reason why you may want to also consider putting your candles in on to Amazon as well to at that point to take advantage of the potential for free Amazon shipping for certain size orders or those who have Prime memberships to offset that cost. That way your candles are more competitive. Another thing to think about is, especially as you're doing new scents, is you can make small little tea lights, some that will just burn for just an hour or two or so forth, just to give people an idea of what your new fragrance may smell like before they really choose to buy it. So if you had to make a bunch of those, you would want to keep track of your cost for the wax, the tea lights, the wicks, and so forth, just like we did. But then say, okay, well, on average, I have to give people 5 free samples of tea lights for one of them to be interested in buying that new scent that I just created. So you'll have to take into account that cost as well for those free samples of your candles to actually make a sale of the candle. So once all that comes together, you can really see how very quickly you need to really think about what is the right price point. And I think a lot of people who start out with just their candle business say, oh, I don't want to be greedy and I really don't want to charge really high prices. However, once you really get into it and see where all these additional costs could come from, you probably do need a fair amount of room so that once all these extra costs for either samples or advertising, shipping, whatever the case may be, come off of your profit, there's still enough there, again, so of your profit to make your time worth it to make the candles based on how many candles you can make in an hour. So hopefully this isn't too confusing the economic standpoint, but these are things that I think are really important. And obviously I think people can get burned out or stop choosing to make their own candles if they say, oh, I lost my entire weekend because I had to label and cut and pack and ship 100 candles, and I didn't think about the time that it was going to take me 6-8 hours out of my weekend to do that on top of the time it took me to make the candles, especially as your business grows. So now it's not really worth my time to do this anymore. So you really need to think about all of those elements, and I would ask you to do some research of other candles that are out there, either small candle operations and stuff like that, and see just what are they charging for the same type of candles that you are making, the same sizes, the same types of containers, and say, okay, well, if they're charging X amount of money, whether it's $10, $15 for the candle, maybe I could price up my candles to $8 or $10, still make a healthy profit and still have a good proposition versus what someone could get in my local neighborhood or the stores around me or the farmer's market, 2 stands over from mine. So in general, these are all the things that you need to think about as far as really getting down to going from this being a hobby to creating your own business. If you really just want to do either a hobby, make them for yourselves, obviously I think the cost is going to be really low and you're really going to enjoy the quality of candles that you can make and the personalization you can have on them versus what you can buy in the store. And obviously I think your family and friends would really appreciate them for presents on the holidays if you just chose to go that far with it. But if you're very serious about starting your own business, you need to think about this like an accountant or like someone who would look at this as a holistic business to make sure that at the end of the day, you're getting enough profit back to make your time worth it to make these candles and all the work that goes into them to make it worthwhile for your time versus how else you can spend your time. That's really what it comes down to. How much do you enjoy making them, which could be a big benefit of it, but also is your time worth it for this versus all the work that goes into it.